Rudy Giuliani has given everything, including his own livelihood, to Donald Trump, and in doing so, he has made himself into a fool that nobody respects anymore. Not even his own daughter is able to overlook the terrible decisions he's made, which has led her to drop a bombshell on Donald Trump. So we'll take a look at this bombshell here in a second, but first, I want to touch on some more bad news for Rudy Giuliani that dropped today. Because he is currently facing bankruptcy, but he did hold on to some hope that maybe his bills that he owes would go down just a little bit. And by a little bit, of course, I mean by half, because half of what you owe is definitely just a little bit. But of course, things did not go his way because half of what he owes is a lot of money. So let's check out this article for more details. Rudy Giuliani's quest to cut down hundreds of thousands in bankruptcy fees by nearly half has not gone in his favor, even after he claimed to be overbilled and even after the judge in the case and the forensic financial advisor both reduced the amount of money he owed. A Friday filing from Global Data Risk noted that the prior ask of $324,000 in fees was dropping down to just $300,000 in fees as a consequence of the objections of the U.S. Trustee's Office and U.S. Bankruptcy Judge Sean Lane's decision. In response to objections that the United States Trustee raised informally, GDR agreed to voluntarily reduce its fees by $7,500. The court reduced the total fees to be paid by an additional $16,000, a footnote detailed. While a reduction of $24,000 is better than nothing for Giuliani's purposes, it's a far cry from what he wanted. In August, Global Data Risk filed its fee application and demanded $324,000 for 1,100 hours of services, and $6,800 more in expenses racked up over the course of the bankruptcy, totaling the fee demanded at the time at $331,000. In response, Giuliani filed documents looking to slice the professional fees he owes nearly in half, claiming that he was overbilled due to duplicate time entries and excessive research-related services. He asked for a reduction of $151,000 from the tab, a discount of roughly 46%. That is a huge discount, especially considering how much it is, $150,000. That's a lot to be taken off. Global Data Risk insisted in reply that Giuliani got an incredible deal under the circumstances, and yet he was still mounting another baseless and bad faith crusade to avoid paying up. Which, what else could you expect from Donald Trump's lawyer? Why didn't Giuliani get the fee reduction he asked for? At a hearing last week, the judge reportedly remarked that Giuliani's own conduct in the bankruptcy was to blame. There was an alarming and inappropriate lack of financial transparency by the debtor, which led to the need for this work, Lane said, according to CNN. In other words, had there been transparency, there would have been no need for creditors, defamed Georgia 2024 election worker Shane Moss, Dominion Voting Systems, and Noel Dunphy to hire Global Data Risk to investigate his finances, and there would have been no whopping fees. So yeah, things are not looking good for Rudy Giuliani, and it's all his fault. All he had to do was just cooperate, and none of this would have happened. Or at least he wouldn't have had these huge fees. But now, let's go ahead and talk about that new bombshell that Rudy Giuliani's daughter just dropped on Donald Trump. Because she wrote an article where she explained why, as a country, we should not let Trump take over. So let's take a look at this article. Now, it is quite long, so we won't be able to go over the whole thing, but we'll touch on the most important parts. Rudy Giuliani's daughter: Trump took my dad from me. Please don't let him take our country too. And as you can see, this is written by Rudy Giuliani's daughter, Caroline Giuliani. I am constantly asking myself how America is back here, even considering the possibility of electing Donald Trump again, after all of the damage he has caused both in office and since. While Kamala Harris has gained extraordinary momentum by infusing this election with vitality and hope, I worry that too many Americans remain disconnected from the visceral, psychologically draining memory of Trump's deeply destabilizing presidency. If enough people truly remembered what that chaos felt like, another Trump term wouldn't even be on the table. But for those open to seeing the bare and unvarnished truth, there are unmistakable reminders of Trump's destructive trail all around us, and it has broken my heart to watch my dad become one of them. As Rudy Giuliani's daughter, I am unfortunately well suited to remind Americans of just how calamitous being associated with Trump can be, even for those who are convinced he's on their side. Watching my dad's life crumble since he joined forces with Trump has been extraordinarily painful, both on a personal level and because his demise feels linked to a dark force that threatens to once again consume America. Not to disregard individual accountability in the slightest, but it would be naive for us to ignore the fact that many of those closest to Trump have descended into catastrophic downward spirals. If we let Trump back into the driver's seat this fall, our country will be no exception. My dad and I have a cartoonishly complicated relationship, but he is still my father, and despite his faults, I love him. I've seen him experience surreal heights and now unfathomable lows. The last thing I want to do is hurt him, especially when he's already down. Plus, we never know how much time we have left with our parents. The totality of that makes this the most difficult piece I've ever written. Yet this moment and this election are so much bigger than any of us. From reproductive rights and the economy to foreign and environmental policy, we need experienced, sane, and fundamentally decent leaders who will fight for us instead of against us, who will safeguard our democracy rather than dismantle it. And as a recently engaged to-be-married 35-year-old who hopes to feel more joyous than fearful about the potential of becoming a parent myself, I need to advocate for a future worth bringing children into, which is why I am voicing my adamant support for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I'll never forget the night my dad told me he was considering becoming Trump's lawyer. I was with him at the Grand Havana Room, a cigar bar at the top of 666 Fifth Avenue, an address too fitting given the unholy alliance my father was about to enter into. Surrounded by thick smoke and powerful men, I ugly cried for a few minutes, then spent the next 3 hours making my vehement case to my father that he not go down this morally perilous path. It was extremely rare for my dad to tell me he was going to do anything before actually doing it. So this moment of connection with him also felt like a cosmic opportunity to do my part to limit the spread of Trump's sinister shadow. I held nothing back. I voiced all of my concerns about Trump's open racism, rampant misogyny, and total lack of empathy. I even told my dad that I already felt ashamed of my last name whenever I saw headlines connecting him with Trump, and that this escalation would only deepen that feeling. For the rest of that night, I held on to hope that a daughter's emotional entreaty might actually sway a father. That fantasy was dispelled the next morning when a news story popped into my feed. Rudy Giuliani was going to work for Donald Trump. The pit I felt in my stomach was a warning, but I had no idea how much destruction my father would come to due to his one-sided fealty to a con man. Growing up in a Gracie mansion, I always knew I had a privileged life, but a particular set of challenges came along with being Rudy Giuliani's daughter, and by that point, I had mostly learned to navigate them. But nothing I have experienced prepared me for the very public and relentless implosion of my father's life. Now this is the part where we're going to start skipping down a little bit because there is a lot of information here. So we're going to finish off with this conclusion of this article. If for whatever reason you choose to sit this election out or lodge a protest vote for a third-party candidate, make no mistake, you are voting for Donald Trump. Take it from me, Trump destroys everything he touches. I saw it happen to my own family. Don't let it happen to yours or our country. Kamala Harris will guide us into a brighter future, but only if we unite behind her. On November 5th, I'll be voting for that future, for justice, stability, and democracy. And I sincerely hope that you'll cast your ballot for Kamala Harris too. So yeah, this was an incredibly powerful article from Rudy Giuliani's daughter that shows just how bad of an impact that Trump has on the people around him. And she talks about how she's worried that the same thing will happen in this country if he's elected again. And I think it's so great to see this article from her because it gives us an insight to the kind of destruction that Trump brings to the inside that we normally just don't get that perspective on. So I applaud her for standing up to her father and Donald Trump despite the very unique and difficult position she is in. And as she says in her article, we cannot let Trump back into the White House again because that would be a disaster for this country.